Did I make sense right there? That is my kryptonite. That's not a superpower. That was a lot of words. Sorry, everybody. Oh, I'm awkward. Okay. It's absolutely healthy to practice the recognition and the naming of one's superpowers.
Oh, I actually have to say it out loud. Like I have to put it onto the interwebs.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep going, Zachary. What's your other superpower? You have many. I'm saying, okay, I get it that it's uncomfortable, but recognize that it's uncomfortable and then think it, do it, name it, say it.
Okay, listeners, you heard her. You need to reach out. We want to hear what your superpowers are.
Yes. So fly, everybody, fly. Use your superpowers.
Welcome to Simply Enough. This is Zachary and Elizabeth, and thanks for tuning in.
If you're liking our podcast, we'd love it if you'd share with your friends and family.
And then rate and review to raise our visibility and spread the message of enoughness.
We love you. And remember, you are simply enough.
Just as you are.
Period.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Simply Enough. I'm Mr. Zachary Leonard.
And I'm Dr. Elizabeth Ignacio. And everybody, welcome back to Simply Enough. We are back from our spring break. It's spring break time for a lot of students and parents. Their schedules often revolve around their kids. So it's kind of like spring break for them as well. So welcome back, everybody. Something that has been brought up to me, at least in terms of our Simply Enough podcast, and Zachary is, and I say this with gratitude for the feedback from people, but how needed this episode is, because it's amazing how pervasive and almost unspoken this feeling is of being not enough. And so it's helpful, it's nurturing, but still, how does one get to this kind of baseline feeling of enoughness, as a baseline? And ironically, the way to go from a feeling of non-enoughness to move over on the spectrum to the baseline of enoughness is actually to go in the totally opposite end of the spectrum by realizing you are more than enough. Everybody is more than enough. So while there is this, kind of feeling of not enoughness, and how can I start to feel just enough or simply enough, the truth of the matter is, I want to celebrate, and Zachary wants to celebrate that we are all more than enough. And one way we can think of that is, I know that where I feel more than enough is, from what I've said in previous episodes about Wonder Woman and why I identify so much with Wonder Woman. And the most important thing about Wonder Woman that I love about her is that she didn't even realize that she had divine within. But once she believed that and tapped into that, she then could cultivate that. But from the very beginning, she already was more than what she believed, because she already had divine within. And what I want to throw out there in terms of this Wonder Woman-ness is that everybody has a superpower, at least one superpower. Everybody's a superhero and everybody has a superpower. And coming from that place of recognizing and realizing and remembering what your superpower is or what your superpowers are, can make you realize that you are more than, and therefore coming to a place of simply enough or just enough is easy. And for me, based on that, what I just said about, I believe everybody has a superpower. Well, one of my superpowers actually that comes really natural is that I see and believe this about everybody. So it's very easy for me when anybody comes to me feeling low about themselves or feeling not enough. It's just very natural for me to say, oh my goodness, but did you see what you did? This is what you did, or this is who you are, or this is your life story. And do you realize how incredible that is about you? And that just truly comes naturally to me. Like I can easily see in others what makes them wonderful and what makes them special and what makes them unique. And I firmly and earnestly and honestly and sincerely and genuinely believe that about each person. I love that superpower, and it comes easy.
Well, I can say, as the recipient of that superpower, I definitely affirm that you have done that for me. And I can say that I have also witnessed you do it for other people. And, we listeners, we will make a list of topics that we think we want to talk about that build on other topics or are tangentially related or harken back to a previous episode, another thought we want to revisit. And Elizabeth threw this idea out a couple of weeks ago at me. And my visceral reaction was like, oh, I don't have a superpower. Like that there was an immediate pushback to this idea, because I know for myself, wrapped into this idea of superpower, there's some egocentrism, there's a little bit of boasting or being braggadocious, all of that I myself put into, right, the idea of a superpower. And then I stepped back and I said, I knew that I had to do some of my own work reframing that idea. Mm-hmm. And really why I was able to do that was because of you, because of your ability to just acknowledge in just a very non-threatening, simple way of saying, no, you have a superpower. Everyone has a superpower. What are yours? So your ability, truly, your superpower was the gift that enabled me to now think about myself as having a superpower. So I just want to affirm that, not that you needed that, but just say, I have been the recipient of your superpower. And I am very much appreciative of that, for sure.
Thank you. It's just literally, I just know this down in my soul. Everybody has honestly more than one superpower. But if we need to start with baby steps of like, name one superpower, everybody has one. And that's why I believe that it's not egocentric to name it, realize it, remember it. It was gifted to you and it was bestowed upon you. So, and that everybody has one. So it's not a comparative thing. So just because one has a superpower doesn't mean that that person or is better than others. It's just, that's their superpower. Mm-hmm. Are we really going to start naming like, who's the better superhero, Wonder Woman versus Supergirl, or do you know what I mean? Yes. Like, and I know that, yes, there are conversations and blog posts and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, back to that comparison is the thief of joy that we often harken back to. Having a superpower is something to own and celebrate and recognize that everybody has one. So it doesn't have to be a better than.
Yeah. It's
just within oneself. One is more than enough because of their superpowers.
Yes. And for those of you that are new to Simply Enough, in one of our early episodes, I talked about how I was working through and still in the process of working through my own issues with my body and whatnot. So I went to the extreme of like, I'm going to go to a nude beach, right? I'm going to go that far into, remember? So I love this exercise of saying, okay, not only are we going to posit this idea of being more than enough, but we're going to push ourselves and you all the way into the place of seeing yourself as a superhero with superpowers. Mm-hmm. So I love this exercise. And I love when you threw this out, Elizabeth, because that immediate discomfort of like, oh, I don't have a superpower. I don't. It was a great moment to just stop, check in and say, well, wait a minute, why do I think that? And what is actually going on there? And what are my thoughts about what it means to have a superpower, et cetera. So all that's to say, I love all of this. And I love this as the launch of our return from our spring break. And I'm going to share what I think in relation to what you're saying, very much connected, would be one of my superpowers. Mm-hmm. And it's actually come out very much to the front because of this podcast. In having a number of conversations with my friends and family who listen, overwhelmingly, I hear what I think is my superpower. And that is I lead with my vulnerability, that I am unabashedly myself and able to be completely vulnerable in a way that stays grounded. Mm-hmm. Now, what's fascinating to me about that is I don't necessarily know that I'm doing that. It's just, who I am.
Because you're not doing, you're being.
Exactly. Yes. So I have a story about this. if you don't mind. I was going into audition for a show in which there were deaf and hearing actors combined. Now, the main source of the play was conveyed by the deaf actors. They were the ones delivering the dialogue. They were the characters and whatnot. Off to the side were the supporting cast, were the hearing actors who were going to be voicing the dialogue and everything for the hearing audience. So there were really going to be two kind of two modes of language being communicated at the same time. Very cool, right? Mm-hmm. So I went into this audition, and this was as a trained interpreter at this point and teacher of the deaf. I was very comfortable with sign language and whatnot, but the idea of interpreting in the moment was new to me in the sense from a performative aspect. So I go into the room, the director was there and the interpreting director was there as well. So they're explaining how this is going to go. Okay, you have the script, but really you're going to be watching the signers, and then you're going to be not only voicing that, but you're going to be giving it affect and character and whatnot. So I said, okay, can I just watch for like 35, 40 seconds just to get a sense of how this is going to go rather than to just jump into it? And you saw the interpreting director kind of pause for a minute, and then she communicated to the other director, and they both looked back and said, yeah, that's fine. We can do that. Now, initially I was like, oh, did I do something wrong? Like, what happened? Why, you know? So we did it. The audition went well. And then after, the interpreting director came up to me and said, you know, that was a pretty powerful moment. And I said, because when I asked to take that pause and just watch how it went, and she said, yes. I said, well, why was it powerful? And she goes, because you said outright what you needed, mm-hmm. and you were completely comfortable just putting out what you needed. And if we said no, it was going to be a no. But I've never seen, and this is somebody who's worked in film and television and theater for many, many years. She's like, I've never seen somebody in your position, the auditioner's position, just feel completely at peace saying what you needed and being vulnerable in that regard. That moment has always stuck with me, I will say. And as we've gone through the podcast, and friends and family, like I mentioned earlier, have spoken about my willingness to go there and to share a story and to be vulnerable in this regard, it connects back with that moment. And I have learned to embrace that as my superpower, and also my ability as a teacher to share that with children, or share that with my faculty as an administrator, or share that as a friend, as just something that potentially others could do if they felt comfortable or not comfortable. But in your way of acknowledging that others have superpowers, I am coming to learn that my ability to be completely vulnerable can also give permission for others to find whatever moments of vulnerability that they can lean into. Does that make sense?
Not only does it make sense, is that not what a superpower is? Is that not what a superhero is? Which is that whatever your superpower may be, benefits not only oneself and therefore one sense of more than enoughness, but actually benefits others, whether it's in what you do, or more importantly, in who you are. One can recognize or aspire to be and do the same way, or if they can't, you can lift and carry. So for example, my superpower in being able to be like, don't you know how wonderful you are? You did this and you did that and you said this, and look how you made this person feel, and look how you make me feel, and all the kind of stuff lifts others. So in some way, shape, or form, a superpower is good for one's, soul and strength, for one's sense of more than enoughness, but then also that superpower benefits others.
Mm-hmm. So I had the privilege of having lunch. I'm going to talk about you as if you're not here. So the listeners and I, we're going to have a separate conversation. Okay. So listeners, Elizabeth is here, but I'm talking to you directly right now. So I got to have lunch with Elizabeth when I was on a visit back in Hawaii, and we got to have lunch at a restaurant that we both love. That's beautiful. And there's a lovely view of the ocean. And it's a spot that we both very much enjoy. As you can probably imagine, because she's so charismatic and lovely and everything, Elizabeth walks in and she says hi to everybody. Okay. Everyone knows her, right? She says hi to everybody. And there's just this lovely warmth about her presence there. And people respond to that. We had a very fun and engaging server who, just it was a good vibe with the table. We just really bonded with her. Nonetheless, towards the end of that conversation, the server said to Dr. Ignacio, again, I'm talking just to you listeners, but she's still here. She said, "You always make me feel so good." And I'll never forget this. Elizabeth just said, "Because you are so good." And it was just matter of fact. And I think that's what I found in connection to what we're talking about today. When a person is just being themselves and their superpower is coming out, one, they're just being themselves, so they don't even know that they're doing it, right? And then it is, for those of us that see it happening, it's so obvious and so beautiful and so luminous, that you're right. It is a gift for others because it does uplift. So I personally, not even as the direct recipient, I got to watch it in action. So I know this is probably making you super uncomfortable, and I'm so sorry for doing that.
Oh my God, we have to take a break.
But it is true.
Tears in my eyes.
I got to watch you uplift somebody and also have them acknowledge how that felt for them. And then in even calling it out, it was almost as if you're like, well, matter of fact, like, yeah, you are this. So even then, when somebody recognized your superpower, it was just like it is what it is kind of moment for you. In the same way that for that person, it was, this is what you've given me. So I just want to share that story as being witness to somebody else's superpower as it uplifts somebody else and then uplifting myself at the same time. So I throw that out there. So thank you, listeners, for letting us have a little private conversation there.
You need to change the subject and talk about something else, because I'm like verklempt. I can't.
Okay, I will keep going. So I will add a little bit of humor in this regard. It is often an interview question. What is your superpower? And admittedly, it's one that
Thank you for changing the subject. I don't like it when it's about me, but thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm like crying right now. Sorry, everybody. Go on. I'm verklempt.
So it is often an interview question that, admittedly, when I was in charge of a hiring process, I didn't want to ask because it can catch people off guard, particularly as myself thinking about, like, am I going to sound boastful or arrogant or all these things associated with it? Nonetheless, so just as a quick little funny story. So my friend was in a moment where she was being interviewed and asked, what was your superpower? And she says, well, I can fall asleep anywhere. I can fall asleep in a car. I can fall asleep, on a train. I can fall asleep in the back seat. Like I can fall asleep anywhere. And she says it was like silence in the room. I'm not kidding, right? That's what her answer was. And the interviewer goes, no. I'm sorry. I mean, professionally, what is your superpower professionally? And she doubled down. She goes, no, I can literally sleep anywhere. So like if I need to take a break or if I'm in the middle of a tough conversation or because she was applying for a teaching position, and she said, or the kids are like, I'm really stressed out and the kids go to a special and I have 30 minutes in my room and I just need to recharge. I can sleep anywhere.
So can I just say, I love that there's a double superpower in what you just said, in that she doubled down.
Yes.
That is a superpower too. I love that she's like, no, I'm authentic. I'm doubling down. You asked the question. I love that. I'm sorry. Keep going. I'm
Isn't
like
that
floored
awesome?
by that answer in a great way.
Well, and to your point, so they really were trying to like, no, we asked this question. We expected this response. So therefore you need to provide this response. And that's exactly where I was going to go with it, which was, no, she gave the answer that she wanted to give, which for this friend is definitely her superpower. 100%.
Come on, everybody is a little envious there, right? I mean, sleeping on planes and that kind of thing. It's awesome.
And somebody else who, in many ways, I think her ability to be authentically herself and also recognize I'm going to give the answer I want, whether or not it may have felt like it to the people in the room, they there was an uplift of others.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even if the interviewer then made a note like, well, she didn't answer the question or whatever, there were other people in the room that I'm sure, and even if they didn't, but I'm sure recognized, oh no, she stuck to who she was. And I just love that story. One, because it's funny. And two, just the way in which she really was authentically herself and displayed her superpower, even in a moment where somebody was trying to push her away from it.
And who are we to judge anyway, each other's superpowers? That's the whole point. Yeah. If that way, it's not comparative. If we suspend our disbelief, like we've talked about in previous episodes, and let's just take for granted, yep, everybody's got at least one superpower, but honestly, most people have multiple ones, and even they don't even recognize it about themselves yet. But if we can own that, then there is no point, no reason, no ruler to the measurement and judgment of one's superpower. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And really superpowers. I have to keep reiterating that, because that is how and why every single person truly is more than enough. Mm-hmm. So as much as we're trying to espouse and uplift those that have a feeling of not enoughness, and when I say those, let's be honest, I mean, I still struggle with my not enoughness too, but in owning and recognizing and believing and having faith in the fact that we are more than enough, that's how it makes it easy to come back to a baseline of at least enoughness. Mm-hmm.
And I love that for our listeners and myself, I'll just speak out loud. I love that the challenge in this is to acknowledge one's superpower. So it's not even like, okay, just find one. It's like, no. You've got more than one. So keep going, like let's push ourselves a little further. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Keep going, Zachary. What's your other superpower? You have many.
But
if I may interrupt, the reason why is it's one thing, and especially for those of us that are uncomfortable receiving compliments and recognition of superpowers, ultimately anyway, the exercise and the practice is of owning one's own superpowers to uplift oneself, so that we're owning it and knowing it, irregardless of what others may think, judge. And so that's why I'm suggesting this practice of, Zachary, keep going.
Yes.
Keep naming your superpowers.
And to just touch base about what's actually happening internally, I do feel uplifted. Now, I've had a little lag time where I can think about this, but there's a wonderful feeling that's happening internally where I'm almost able to breathe a little bit. There's a lightness in this, and I feel like I'm giving myself a hug. I don't know how to explain it any other way. But
there is a lightness to it. And I love that you said that, because there is a lightness to it and an upliftment, I like to say I'm carbonation to soda, or I'm helium to a balloon, and uplifting. And you can do that. One can do that for oneself, because in a world where we weigh ourselves down with, my worth is based on my salary, or my worth is based on my mission, or my worth is based on my purpose, or my worth is based on my title. That's really actually contracting and heavy. Whereas actually to make fun and play and enjoy the exercise and the lightness of what might appear frivolous, but actually there is truth in the frivolity of choosing a superpower, is enlightening. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of words. Did I make sense right there? Yes. That is my kryptonite. That's not a superpower. That was a lot of words. Sorry, everybody.
Oh my God, which is a whole nother tangent, which we don't need to go down, because then I think that if we have people that, like our friends, like Elizabeth to me, and hopefully me to Elizabeth,
definitely you really can,
that you can share this with others. I think what becomes a really interesting conversation is then how that superpower has served us or uplifted us or mm-hmm. been a part of our relationship. And then also where I'm going with this, somewhat clunkily, but where I'm going with this is oftentimes how I interpret what I think is a superpower of yours, you see as maybe different. And so there are moments, Elizabeth, where you are, for me, so eloquent and hitting so many turns of phrases that just come together in a way that ping me in all these places. And then inevitably you get to the end of it and you say, oh my gosh, that doesn't make sense, or that was too verbose. And so in that moment, I am so the recipient of what I see as one of your superpowers. And yet in that moment, almost at the end, you're not even aware that it's happening, and you're just so yourself in that moment. So anyway, I know this has been a lot of Elizabeth
I'm like
love.
awkward. Yeah, no. So oh, I'm awkward. Okay.
So another superpower that I would say that I have, there is 7-year-old Zachary that lives very much currently with 41-year-old Zachary. Mm-hmm. And I it's very natural. It just happens. 7-year-old Zachary to come out. And as a 41-year-old man, to be unabashedly silly and playful and joyful is definitely a superpower that I have. And I know it's a superpower. And I also understand that sometimes it's a little off-putting for others, because I love to play. I love to be silly. And I love to have that moment where I just lean into the joy of a situation. Or
yes,
there's a moment that I think needs a little joy, or, a little zhuzh or something. And I go for it. So that I would say is definitely, and evidenced in the podcast and just in my life in general, the number of moments where people have commented on how I'm not afraid to be childlike Zachary in certain situations. So that's what.
And you take us with you. So just like that, just like, I mean, I hate damsel in distress, but just like Superman, like carrying the damsel in distress and lifting her away from a dark place. I mean, that's what you do. That definitely is one of your many superpowers. Keep going.
See, now I'm getting all like, ooh, because it is it's such an interesting place to be in. You are definitely in your element here, and it's so helping me. And at the same time, I feel that part of me that's pushing back. That's like, oh, you did too. That's good. You're good enough with two. But
there's so many more. And so it's okay. So recognize and acknowledge that like discomfort, because that discomfort of owning our superpower has been ingrained, implanted, blazoned on our brain and our being of like, oh no, I don't want to name it, much less even know it or think it. And I'm saying, okay, I get it that it's uncomfortable, but recognize that it's uncomfortable and then think it, do it, name it, say it.
Okay, listeners, you heard her. You need to reach out. We want to hear what your superpowers are.
Yes.
So name them.
Everybody exercise. Everybody practice this exercise of thinking about naming, saying your superpowers.
And if you're feeling particularly emboldened, share them with somebody else. Actually name it to somebody else and say, hey, I want to tell you what my superpower is, because that for me is probably the biggest challenge of talking about this. Was not only did I have to like recognize it, but then put it out there. Now, for somebody who leads with this vulnerability, I got over that pretty quickly, but admittedly, I myself was like, oh, I actually have to say it out loud. Like I have to put it, onto the interwebs and all the things. So, okay. But
when we remove, that shame, it's unbelievable how something like a superpower we have taken on to be shameful, to think and own that there is divine within, that there is something more than our titles, our salary, our income, our anything, that just by how and who we are more than. We have placed shame upon ourselves for even thinking that. So let's shed the shame and own. And the way that we can do that is recognize everybody has that. Everybody has superpowers. So, we said in the first episode, almost like as if it's condoning or apologetic. Now we're saying, and that's okay that you've got a superpower, and that's okay that everybody's got a superpower, because it's not about comparing and being better than. It's just more than what one believes about oneself.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to harken back to a previous episode about like standing in your place, there's really a groundedness in it. And yes. I find that one of my initial reactions to this question was it felt somewhat aggressive and meaning like I'm kind of in somebody's face about it, which is, I am like, this is my superpower, rather than no, it's just a centeredness and it's acknowledgement of alignment of self. And there's so much peace in that. So yes. Yeah, I'm 100% with you in the benefit of doing this kind of work. Also, because I think we are so quick to acknowledge what our quote unquote weaknesses are. All right, let me see. I think that we're so quick to acknowledge the things we're working on, or what we might say are not our strengths, and yet the inverse we don't give ourselves as well. But Beautiful. For others, we would be so quick to say,
so quick, exactly.
Here are your superpowers.
Yeah. That's right. That is my superpower, that it comes so easily and naturally to be able to do that for others. Mm-hmm. And then you so kindly and generously saying a superpower about me. I am like, so like I thought my heart was going to leap out of my chest in like anxiety. Like it was so uncomfortable. But we have to practice that and own that about ourselves, not only when our superpower benefits others, but when our superpower lets us know ourselves better. And, again, how much I love Wonder Woman, and that her original, the first movie, when she didn't realize that she had divine within, but she knew that, there was some sort of warrior about her. But then when she, took the ship to London and they, placed her in everyday wear to kind of mute her so that she can fit in, she was trying to do all of her like, warrior army, soldier moves in this restrictive clothing that society has made the norm. And she couldn't do it. She had to doff, not don the clothes. She had to doff. She had to take off the clothes because she recognized how restrictive and confining it was, and that it couldn't let her be the superhero that she was. And that's the same thing. We so quickly don the clothing of muting ourselves and don the clothing of shaming and darkening ourselves, as opposed to tapping into the divine within and pulling out the light and letting the light be radiant and then uplifting ourselves and others.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, keep going.
I can't. I literally stopped myself because I'm like, there I go again, talking too much. I don't even know what I'm saying. Again, kryptonite.
But in the same place of being witness to somebody's superpower, it's just interesting how I am very much with you. What you're saying is resonating, and then you hit that point where you like check in with yourself. But anyway,
I donned those clothes. I donned those clothes and the gag order of like, shut up, Ignacio.
Exactly. But okay, this is what I wanted to say. What I find interesting about you bringing up Wonder Woman is this kind of storyline is very prevalent in literature, plays, film, whatever, where we see somebody quote unquote come into their own and own or embrace themselves and their powers, that there has to be a reason why we're drawn to that kind of story. And I suspect that we're drawn to that kind of story because we all do, I think, inherently understand that there's something unique and valuable that we offer. Whether or not society, cultural,
more than we offer, we were born with, and we were gifted with, and we were blessed with. Sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you for adding that. And yet there is that tension of we can allow that to live in a story and the tension of whether or not we would actually take that moment to embrace it ourselves. It's just interesting to me because as you were talking about Wonder Woman, I thought, okay, well then there's also, there's Harry Potter, and then there's this, like, I was kept thinking of these books that I used to read to my students, just how prevalent this type of owning your superpower is in media and in literature, that there must be something to its universality.
Well, so Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, philosopher, his big overall thesis, if you will, or running crux of his work is a hero's journey. And there is actually a really great documentary about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, and uses movies. And so this documentary is called Finding Joe. So Google it. It's fantastic. And it's so easy to watch. It's not like some, boring go to sleep, though your friend can fall asleep no matter where, but it's a great, easy to watch, powerful, impactful, entertaining documentary about Joseph Campbell and his thoughts of how pervasive this story of a hero's journey is in Wizard of Oz, Star Wars, like you name it, and it's all there. And it's about almost the discomfort of a person, an individual, going through hardships, recognizing that those hardships are part of the journey through which he or she will discover and believe the heroism that lies within. And it's just fantastic.
Yeah.
A Hero's Journey. Finding Joe is the name of the movie, the documentary.
Well, I'm definitely going to check it out. I also appreciate that now we are going to push ourselves and our listeners into this thinking, but as an application to themselves. And as we return from our spring break, I anticipate that a lot of the themes that are going to come out of our episodes are really going to harken back to this idea that we are more than enough, and that we ourselves are superheroes with superpowers, and that we have the divine within. And so listeners, I just invite you to really take the time to think about yourself as a superhero and own your superpowers, name them, say them out loud, hug them, hold them, and consider sharing them, and think of more than one, right? Really, really take some time to think of more than one. And then use that lens as we go into the next couple episodes and throughout the rest of our sophomore year, as we spoke about last episode, to just see yourself as more than enough.
And that way, the simply enoughness comes easy. That's baseline.
Amen. So before we wrap up, do you have any more superpowers of your own that you can throw out?
So another one that I know and might be irritating to others, but it's just now for me is okay. is I am able to find the blessings in experiences and situations. And what a blessing is though though the experience or situation might suck, that there is a lesson in it. And even beyond a lesson in it, it's actually a blessing in disguise. So ultimately becomes a blessing. So I have a superpower of being able to, and not deny and not Pollyanna, because, I sit, in moments of anger and frustration and disappointment. And I don't pretend they're not there, but upon going through those moments of feeling I then am able with the superpower to change my glasses, change my lens of perspective of looking for and recognizing the blessings. And that does uplift me and uplift others out of situations and circumstances.
So it's interesting that you said this might be irritating to others, because as I was thinking about superpowers, in preparation for this conversation, I also acknowledge that sometimes superpowers don't always serve a situation, and that's okay too. And that's not a discredit of the superpower or the recipient, but it's still an alignment of self. So, and what I mean by that is, as I spoke earlier, that I'm very comfortable leaning into the silliness or the joy of a situation. I have received feedback that other people were not in that place, and they didn't like that I maybe made the situation lighthearted or I added some levity when that's not what they wanted. And even though that was still an acknowledgement of I was still in my place of being me and exercising my superpower for a situation, it may not have served or uplifted the others, but that wasn't a comment on me or my superpower ability. So I also just throw out there that it's not always going to land. But that's not a discredit of the superpower. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Even the you're gonna so laugh when I say this. So as much as I'm a Wonder Woman fan, I'm actually more a Avengers and Marvel fan as opposed to DC Comics. Yeah. So and everybody thinks that I'm like this comic book person. I don't own a single comic book, but I do love the movies. Yeah. But anyway, my point is this: even when you look at the journey of all of the Marvel Universe superheroes, so much of their journey, which actually makes it entertaining, and though it's, you know, it's a movie, it's not real, there is kind of an authenticity or an identification within the movies for an individual. Their journeys still are also their own managing and management of even their strengths and their superpowers. So,
okay.
Yeah, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't mean like, you know, be a bull in a china shop with one superpowers. But again, what I think many of us actually have to practice more is we're well practiced, I think, for many, in muting ourselves and making ourselves smaller and making ourselves less than. And we are well practiced in putting others on podiums and pedestals. And so, yeah, though the superpowers might not land in every situation, and we do, there is a wisdom to the management and utilization of said superpowers, it's still, what this episode serves is as a reminder that it's absolutely healthy to practice the recognition and the naming of one's superpowers, because we probably don't do that nearly as much as we make ourselves small and not take up space. So fly, everybody, fly.
So to that end, I'm going to throw out the idea, as our faithful listeners may know, and to our new listeners, you would come to find out, we often end our episodes by saying, you are simply enough just as you are, period. And I'm going to posit that maybe we change it a little bit and we say, not only are you simply enough, you are more than enough.
Just as you are, period. Fly, everybody. Use your superpowers.